filtered through the thin white curtains of Rica Suzuki's small apartment, painting soft golden patterns on the wooden floor. Outside, the faint hum of tricycles and motorbikes passing along the bustling streets of Manila mixed with the chatter of vendors setting up their stalls. It was another ordinary day in her neighborhood, the kind of day that felt warm and familiar, like an old song you couldn't help but hum along to. Rica, still wrapped in her soft, faded blanket, blinked against the gentle light spilling through her window. Her bedroom was a cozy chaos, a mix of colorful throw pillows, neatly stacked books she'd meant to read, and the faint scent of lavender from a candle she had lit the night before. The walls were peppered with Polaroid photos of her friends, little trinkets she had collected over the years, and an oversized corkboard where her to-do lists sat pinned with cute cat-shaped pushpins. She stretched, her hair messy and unkempt, before finally sitting up and reaching for her phone on the nightstand. Like every other morning, the first thing she did was scroll through her notifications. Instagram, TikTok, and a few messages from her college group chat greeted her, along with a meme from her best friend Carla. Rica chuckled softly, the kind of laugh that escapes without warning before setting the phone down. Her life wasn't anything extraordinary, at least not yet. She was a 23-year-old student studying communications, juggling coursework and part-time gigs to make ends meet. Her TikTok account, where she posted random dance videos, daily musings, and the occasional aesthetic montage of her day, had a modest following. Nothing big, just a little corner of the internet she called her own. The apartment was quiet, except for the faint buzz of the electric fan. Rica stood up, her bare feet padding against the cool floor as she made her way to the kitchen. It was a small but functional space, cream-colored countertops, mismatched mugs hanging on hooks, and a fridge adorned with magnet souvenirs from her family's trips to the provinces. She grabbed a sachet of instant coffee, pouring it into her favorite mug, the one with a tiny chip on the rim, but still her favorite nonetheless. As the kettle whistled, Rica opened the window above the sink, letting in the sounds of the outside world. The streets were alive with the clamor of life, vendors calling out the price of fresh pandesal, the clink of bottles from a nearby sari-sari store, and the distant laughter of children playing a game of tag. Rica took it all in as she sipped her coffee, the warm bitterness grounding her in the moment. It was a peaceful morning, one of those where time seemed to stretch just a little longer than usual. Rica's neighbor, Mrs. Velasquez, a kind elderly woman with an endless supply of gossip and homemade uba jam, waved at her from across the alley. Rica smiled and waved back, promising herself she'd drop by later for a quick chat. As she turned back to her small living room, the laptop on her table blinked to life. It was a reminder of her pending assignments, the edits she needed to finish for her part-time job, and the growing list of tasks she had written out on a sticky note. But for now, Rica wasn't in a rush. She sank into her couch, pulling a throw blanket over her legs, her mind lingering on nothing in particular. The day ahead would be like any other, or so she thought. In the soft, unhurried rhythm of her morning, Rica had no idea that something unexpected was quietly brewing in the background, a spark waiting to catch, a moment that would soon reshape her life in ways she couldn't yet imagine. But for now, it was just another peaceful start, the kind that felt like a safe place to stay in for a while longer. The faint sound of a notification broke the silence, pulling her gaze back to her phone. With a sip of coffee and a curious glance at the screen, Rica leaned forward, her finger hovering over the glowing message. And just like that, the calm morning began to ripple with a faint, almost imperceptible energy, a quiet prelude to something more. Rica's finger hovered for a moment before she tapped the notification. It was nothing urgent, just a tag from Carla on TikTok. She opened it lazily, expecting another one of Carla's random finds. A funny video, a new dance challenge, or maybe another "you have to try this food hack" clip. The screen loaded, revealing a short video of a scenic beach somewhere in Batangas, overlaid with soft, relaxing music. In the caption, Carla had written, "Manifesting this for us soon. Spesties, getaway, sure goals." Rica smiled. The thought of escaping the noise and deadlines, even just for a weekend, felt almost like a dream. She closed the app, setting her phone down next to her now empty mug. The morning light shifted ever so slightly, casting a warmer glow across the room, and Rica stood, stretching as if to shake off the lingering sleepiness. She moved back into the kitchen, tidying up the small mess she had made. Her hands worked automatically, rinsing her mug and wiping the counters as her mind wandered. The steady rhythm of her routine was soothing, grounding. Outside, the faint jingle of the Taho vendor's call floated up to her window, and Rica leaned out to see him weaving through the narrow alleyway below. The soft clink of the Taho containers and the warm, sweet aroma filled the air, reminding her of childhood mornings spent in her Lola's garden. Rica grabbed a small bill from the jar on her counter and hurried downstairs, the concrete steps cool against her feet. The vendor greeted her with a cheerful smile, and she returned it as she handed him the money. He layered the warm tofu with syrup and tiny sago pearls in a plastic cup, the steam curling up as he worked. It was a simple ritual, but one Rica cherished. As she climbed back up to her apartment, the cup warm in her hands, she felt a quiet contentment settle over her. Back in her apartment, she set the Taho on the coffee table and opened her laptop. Her to-do list stared back at her, each bullet point like a small mountain waiting to be climbed. Rica sighed but wasn't overwhelmed. She had learned to take things one step at a time, to pace herself. She started with her part-time editing job, opening a folder filled with clips of a corporate training seminar she needed to cut and polish. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills and gave her the flexibility to juggle school. Her fingers danced over the keyboard, adjusting timelines and fine-tuning transitions. The quiet hum of her laptop filled the space, blending with the faint sounds of the city outside. Time passed unnoticed as she worked, the morning slipping into the soft golden hues of early afternoon. Rica paused to stretch, rolling her shoulders and glancing out the window. The streets below had grown quieter, the usual midday lull settling over the neighborhood. Her phone buzzed again, drawing her attention. This time, it was a message from her mother. A photo of their dog curled up on the porch back home, accompanied by a simple, "Miss you, anak." Rica smiled, a warmth blooming in her chest. She typed back quickly, promising to visit soon. It had been a few months since her last trip home, and she missed the comforting chaos of her family's house, the loud laughter and shared meals. As the day wore on, Rica decided to take a break. She set her laptop aside and reached for her phone again, opening TikTok to scroll mindlessly. It was her way of unwinding, losing herself in the endless stream of videos. Dance challenges, cooking tutorials, funny skits. They blurred together, a colorful mosaic of creativity and chaos. Every so often, she'd come across a video that made her pause, either to laugh or to admire the effort behind it. Without realizing it, she stumbled onto her own profile. Her most recent video, a short clip of her and Carla attempting a popular dance trend, had gained more likes than usual. Rica tilted her head, curious. It wasn't viral by any means, but the engagement was higher than she expected. She scrolled through the comments, smiling at the encouraging words from strangers and the teasing ones from Carla. The sun began to dip lower, painting the sky outside in hues of orange and pink. notice at first, too absorbed in her screen. It wasn't until the light in her apartment dimmed that she looked up, realizing how much time had passed. She stood and moved to the window, leaning her elbows on the sill as she watched the sky change. The city was quieter now, the rush of the day giving way to the stillness of the evening. For a moment, Rica felt a sense of clarity, as if the world had slowed down just for her. The distant sound of a jeepney's engine, the faint laughter from a nearby apartment, the cool breeze brushing against her face. It all felt so vividly alive. And yet, in the quiet simplicity of that moment, there was a hint of anticipation, like the faintest ripple before a wave. She turned back to her apartment, the soft glow of her laptop screen calling her back to work. But as she sat down again, there was a small, nagging thought at the edge of her mind, a feeling that the ordinary rhythm of her day was about to shift, ever so slightly. But for now, she let it rest, content to let the night unfold in its own quiet way. The night settled over Manila, wrapping the city in its familiar warmth. Rica sat cross-legged on the couch, her laptop humming softly in front of her. A single desk lamp cast a warm glow across the room, leaving the corners in soft shadows. The Taho cup sat empty beside her, forgotten as she lost herself in the quiet rhythm of her work. Outside, the world had grown still. The faint chirp of crickets mingled with the occasional hum of a passing motorbike, creating a soothing backdrop to the muffled clicks of her keyboard. Rica leaned back, stretching her arms over her head as she sighed. The edited video was finally done, exported, and ready to send. She closed her laptop, letting the silence settle around her. The apartment felt peaceful, almost cocoon-like, the kind of stillness that invited reflection. She glanced at the cluttered corkboard on the wall, her eyes lingering on a Polaroid of herself and Carla, their faces lit with wide, goofy grins. For a moment, she felt a pang of longing, a craving for something more than the steady rhythm of her everyday life. Her gaze drifted to the small balcony at the far end of the room. Without thinking, Rica stood and walked over, sliding the glass door open. The air outside was cool and carried the faint scent of rain, though the sky was clear. She leaned against the railing, looking out at the glittering cityscape. The lights of Manila stretched endlessly, a patchwork of colors and life that felt so close yet so distant. She took a deep breath, letting the quiet of the moment wash over her. From this height, the world seemed softer, like a painting with blurred edges. Rica's thoughts wandered, drifting through memories and dreams, hopes and uncertainties. There was a sense of restlessness she couldn't quite shake, an unspoken question hanging in the air. Her phone buzzed from the coffee table, cutting through her thoughts. Rica turned and walked back inside, her steps slow and deliberate. The screen lit up with Carla's name and a single message. "You have to see this. It's crazy." Below, it was a link to a TikTok video. Rica's brows furrowed in mild curiosity. Carla was always sharing something, but her tone this time felt different, urgent almost. She clicked the link, letting the app open as she sank back onto the couch. The video loaded, and Rica's face immediately appeared on the screen. Her heart skipped. It was her dance video with Carla, the one she'd posted just a few days ago, but this version was edited. Someone had taken the original clip, spliced it with dramatic zoom-ins, overlaid it with captions, and paired it with a trending remix. The text above the video read, "This Pinay girl's vibe is unmatched." Rica stared, her mind racing. The view count in the corner climbed rapidly, ticking past the hundreds of thousands. Comments flooded in at an impossible speed, a blur of fire emojis, heart eyes, and exclamations in multiple languages. Rica's chest tightened as a mix of emotions, disbelief, rolling through them slowly. Most were lighthearted and positive, but others felt more invasive, dissecting her appearance, her movements, her surroundings. Rica frowned, the initial thrill giving way to a faint unease. The world felt closer now, pressing in through the tiny screen in her hand. She locked her phone and set it face down on the table, her heart still racing. The apartment, once a safe haven, suddenly felt smaller, like the walls had shifted inward. Rica stood and walked back to the balcony, her thoughts a tangled mess. The city lights shimmered below, indifferent to her sudden shift in reality. For a moment, Rica felt as if she was standing on the edge of something vast and unknowable. The quiet life she had built for herself now felt precarious, as if one more step could send her tumbling into a world she wasn't sure she was ready for. But there was also a flicker of excitement, a pull toward the unknown. The sound of her phone buzzing again broke the silence, but she didn't turn back this time. Rica gripped the cool metal of the balcony railing, her thoughts heavy and unspoken. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of laughter echoed through the streets, carried on the breeze like a whisper. The city below continued to hum, unaware of the quiet transformation taking place above. Rica stood still, her reflection faint in the glass door behind her. The night stretched on, filled with possibility and uncertainty, as she lingered on the cusp of something she couldn't yet define. And there, beneath the vast starless sky, Rica Suzuki's story teetered, unresolved and waiting.